Hello, everyone. I'm Margaret Martens, Executive Director of the Water Systems Council. We are here today to discuss the pandemic and its effects on the water well industry with a cross-section of our members, including manufacturers, distributors, and a well contractor. On the talk today, we have Dan Story, Vice President of Groundwater and Irrigation with Grundfos. We have Gerry Duggan, Vice President of Sales and Marketing with Flexcon Industries. Pat O'Hanlon, Vice President of Western Region for Blake Equipment. Ryan Arnett, Vice President GM, Austin Pump and Supply Company. And Jeff Smith, Master Groundwater Contractor and President of Smith Well Drilling. We also have Water Systems Council Government Affairs Director, Jeff Moore, who will bring us up to date on what's going on at the federal level towards the end of our conversations. So, gentlemen, thank you for being here today, and let's just jump right into our questions. So, my first broad question is, to what degree do you think the water well industry will be impacted by COVID-19 and the resulting economy? Dan, can we start with you?
Sure. Well, I think we've got almost 30 million people out of work. So I think there's no way that there cannot be an impact on our business. I also think that this situation with oil prices isn't helping anything either. Our market's about, it's a large replacement business. So roughly 70% of our business is so. I think, in terms of other industries, I think you're going to see us get back a little bit lesser, but I think there's no doubt that we'll see an impact. We've kind of been, with Grundfos, we've been kind of forecasting an impact, a pretty good impact in Q2, maybe, and then in Q3, start to see things stabilize and then get back to whatever the new normal is going to be. And so far, the impact in Q2 hasn't been that bad. We started off the year well, and in March we actually saw an uptick because there was a lot of buy-up where customers were mitigating the risk of a possible supply situation down the road. So, and then April was really choppy. Some weeks were good, some weeks weren't so good, but all in all, so, I say so far Q2 is not as bad as we had thought, and we'll have to see. I think nobody knows how bad it's going to be. And I think, as I said, there'll definitely be an impact. I think the important thing is just scenario planning right now. It's really knowing what certain if our revenue's here, what impacts is that going to have for my business, and what are the things that I'm going to need to be doing. So, really important right now. I think it's playing first and hope for the best.
Okay, very good. Gerry, how are things with Flexcon?
I'd actually echo many of Dan's comments. There's certainly a significant replacement aspect to our business, in the fact that we've been designated as an essential business. Not only Flexcon as a factory, but certainly our workers as well, has enabled us to maintain a significant volume, very close to prior years. Dan's point, our business has not been, it's certainly been negatively impacted, but not to the extent that we've seen in other industries and other manufacturing businesses. And I think, again, Dan's point was spot on, that because of the regional nature of the impact of COVID on the country, we're seeing some parts of the country that are going just as they did in prior years, and actually even better than prior years. But we're seeing other parts of the country, and particularly probably the Northeast and down that I-95 corridor all the way to where Jeff is, that have had more restrictive lockdowns in terms of new construction and things like that. So in terms of how it's going to impact us going forward, the replacement aspect, tells us that we're going to be okay in terms of that. However, certainly on the new construction side, There's a certain portion of our business that is associated with that, and we benefit from that. And as we see states begin to ease restrictions on new construction, again, the Northeast has been much more restrictive than other parts of the country. I think, as Dan said, we're looking at a third quarter, potential brightening of what we see. And then the fourth quarter, there was certainly a pent-up demand in the industry. And we came into this at the end of March, like Grunfus, we had a record March at Flexcon Industries. So we came into this looking like really strong, and then all of a sudden it stopped. So it depends, the economic impact and when people are actually able to get back to work and begin to focus on things that are not a priority right now for them. But overall, I think, as an essential, not only business, but an essential element to life, water is something that people need. And if you don't have city water, then you have a private well, and you have to have water. I mean, you need that for everyday life. So I think that, the impact is going to be reasonably significant. However, it's not nearly as bad as we might see in some other aspects, new construction, or somebody wants to put on a new deck or something like that. So.
Okay. All righty. Ryan, how are things in Texas?
Texas is still beautiful. We anticipated a downturn, contraction of business, and we still anticipate a contraction of business. Surprisingly, though, we have not seen that yet, really, in a measurable way in any of the markets we're working on. Wow. Been affected by COVID. But again, we anticipate major contraction. Unemployment levels are too high in many areas, and I don't see anything other than the most essential and emergency expenditures from the line consumers. Some forecasts are pushing back, reaching pre-COVID employment levels years at this point. And so we're really rethinking and restructuring what we're going to do in the future.
Sure.
How we're going to spend our cash.
Okay. Patrick, being in the Northeast, so it's interesting to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so it's really going to echo a lot of what others have said earlier, especially Dan and Gerry. Even in Northeast, it's been, we're from New Jersey up to Maine, and it's been different from state to state on where we've seen either different executive orders from the state. So some states have had only even essential work being done. So there's drillers only doing drilling with where we're out of water, so not new well work done. So we've seen a reduction there for sure. I would say approximately it's probably, in that 20% off in the month of April. As everyone else stated, we had a record first quarter from, January through mid-March. And obviously mid-March is when things really started to slide. From a related water well business, we were fortunate because some of the things that have happened down south have stayed pretty stable. We are also a drill rig dealer, so we actually have had a couple of rigs sold going to the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast market because we had the inventory on hand. So from that perspective, they're not seeing what we're seeing in the Northeast. And putting in perspective from the actual virus itself, you look at our branches closest to New York City, those are the branches that have had the biggest impact. That northern New Jersey's been a tough market for us. And as you seem to progress north away from those hot spots, we've been less affected. And the fortunate part, we've had no one in our company at this point be affected by the virus itself or any of their families. So, that major, it's really big for us to realize that, from that perspective, we've been safe.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And Jeff is in New York. He, as I say, is a well contractor there. So certainly he's been in the midst of all of this. Jeff, what do you think?
Well, first, I want to thank you, Margaret, for having me, giving me the opportunity to participate in today's forum. I think my biggest concern was being a small employer. How long will this last? Was the state going to force us to shut down entirely? Would we have to lay off our help? And once it was determined that the state said we were considered an essential service, I told everyone that regardless of our workload, my help being my biggest asset, that no one's going to get laid off. And although we have to reduce hours at times, we've continued to work for the past 7 weeks, although our drilling has been curtailed. So yeah, my employees, they have mortgages, kids in colleges, and I didn't want to lose them. And fortunately, everybody's working every day at this point.
Okay, good. Okay, so back another question that's somewhat related, and that is, to what degree do you think your company's workflow will be impacted by COVID? Dan?
Yeah, so everything's been impacted. So we're a global company. We I guess we were lucky to have see our colleagues in other parts of the world go through this, and by the time we got here, kind of a lot of the handbook had been written, and there was a lot of just making sure we knew exactly what to do once we hit this phase and that sort of thing. But if you look around our business, everything's different. Our customer support centers are all working remote, have been for a couple months now, and really fortunate to be able to do that and haven't had a drop in customer service. We had in 2017 when Hurricane Harvey hit, we have a customer service center in Houston. We were able to cover that with our customer service center in Kansas, but at that time realized we needed to do something about this risk, and so we were already set up to work remote. So that's been really good to see. But even in that case, you worry about those people that are used to coming to work and seeing each other every day and missing out on that and kind of feeling out in an island. And you've got people that have child care concerns because the kids aren't in school, and so it's a crazy dynamic. Of course, our sales teams are grounded, and you've got a group of people that's what they do. They go out and go see their buddies out in the field, and so it's been interesting to manage through that. But I think everybody's doing a really good job of trying to just really keep engaged with customers and make phone calls, do online trainings, online webinars, and that sort of thing. And now we're getting ready to prepare for the next step when we can go out and see customers. Now we're doing things that I thought we'd never do. So we're doing things like putting together PPE kits for each salesperson. So when we're ready to go again, we've got all the right precautions. We've got a list of here are the things to do, and so so it's really impacted all of our work, I would say.
Okay. What about things at FlexCon, Gerry?
Again, Dan has really touched on all the points that I might have touched on as well. And for us, it's really just learning to work another way. And, that really goes from the factory and our customer service team. We've got a minimal amount of people working within our office staff. Most of our staff is working from home. But the factory, of course, is running and hasn't stopped running throughout this. We're taking all the steps, and I know this is in some of the other questions, but we're taking all the steps to ensure that our employees are safe and that they feel safe at work, because I think that's probably the most important thing. I think it's probably impacted our, again, much like Dan just said, but it's probably impacted our sales force more than anybody else. These are guys that are used to being, out on the road every week or every other week, and they're out there seeing their customers. More importantly, seeing their customers. But they're also interacting with other vendors and identifying, what's happening within the industry. And these guys are grounded, and it's really been, not called lightning, but it's been really heartening for me to see the way our organization has worked together. We're able to, we're a small family-run company, not an international organization like Gruntus, and we were able to allow, provide the infrastructure for our people to work from home, number one, and seamlessly integrate our internal communication systems with those people. It's as simple as, when I dial somebody's extension now from my cell phone, I get them, sitting in their home office. And so it's just learning to do business in another way. And honestly, you wonder if some of the things, going forward, how we might change and evolve as a company and really as an industry to what the new normal might be, over the next few years. And nobody really knows, of course, what that is. But it's been, again, like I said, heartening to see the ability to interact with our customers on a day-to-day basis and continue our daily operations and keep our employees safe, and continue to fill the need that the water system industry in general serves the United States and actually all of North America.
Thank you, Gerry. And if you don't mind moving a little closer to your mic, you're kind of cutting in and out a little bit.
I'm sorry. I have been through 7 mics trying to figure that problem out.
Okay, Ryan, how's your workflow going?
So look, the biggest change to our workflow is safety's now at the forefront of all of our complete planning process. I won't say it was an afterthought or an oversight in the past, but now we have to make sure that anything we're doing, our employees are safe, and there's a real focus on protecting our people. Mm-hmm. We're also navigating conflicting regional and state restrictions. And as we run deliveries or move through different counties, regulations change, and we have to make sure that everybody's up to speed and knows at every point what's required of them. That's something never could have anticipated having to do. Mm-hmm. 2 miles one direction is a different rule than it is here. And we have to take all that into account. Mm-hmm. We are an even smaller family-owned company. Everybody who works for us is family. So a big part of what we've done is make sure that we're supporting all of our employees as, physical and emotionally, and making sure they have access to some of the stuff that they didn't know we provided. Whether it's helping them with childcare, or not that we provide childcare, but we've been able to lead them to some resources that they need, and really being sounding boards for any of their concerns. At every level, every employee's had an opportunity to voice any concerns that they've had to us, and we've done our best to address them. Every day's different, and there's something new thrown at us from a different direction every way. So next week's going to be totally different than this week was.
Yep.
One thing we're sure of.
Mm-hmm. Patrick?
Again, echoing what others have said. One of the things I'll say is we were really one of the first ones in our region to start doing some different things. We're pulling our sales force off the road and doing curbside pickup. And some of the customers met that with some resistance. Why are we doing that? So, for sure when we did it, we knew for sure we wanted to protect our employees, our customers, and if it meant at that point loss of business, that's what it meant. But we really wanted to make that the focus when we did it. And then it wasn't too long into it and everybody realized that, hey, this makes a lot of sense to, make sure we're doing that. As it was stated earlier, Salesforce, it was a big change. We had the technical ability that we're able to do what, Gerry had said, and our people are getting calls remotely at a number. So that's we've had that capability for years. We just didn't typically do it with our sales folks. So now they're sitting in an office in one of our locations, just like the rest of the people. We took as many people out of our offices as we could and still be able to provide service to the contractors. So I would say that we probably reduced our staffing levels in our locations by about 40% when you look at people working from home at this point. The other things that we're doing, again, trying to follow those guidelines that CDC put in place, and with the face mask, whether it's an executive order from each state, we've gone to the to the state that has the most conservative approach, or if we want to say the most stringent, I guess you could really say that's what we've gone to. So we'd have people saying, well, why are we doing that? Our state isn't asking us to do that. We've said we're going to do it across the board the same. And when we start to reopen, if that's what you want to say, we're going to do the same thing. So we'll err on the side of caution to keep people safe. That's our first goal. And that's really been the main focus of what we've done with our processes. As far as delivering product, it's delivering product. We do our best with our drivers to do curbside drops. We try to have them make sure they're cleaning down customers' doors, et cetera, keep our customers safe as well as our own people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you. And Jeff, I know that you've had some changes in workflow there, I'm sure, being in New York.
Oh, definitely. With New York and us being in upstate, just out of New York City, in the epicenter of this crisis, many trades, not only the water well industry, electricians, plumbers, supply houses, support industries, they've cut staff, closed altogether, changed their hours of business. Unfortunately, things are enforced in different townships and different counties. And so even yesterday we weren't shut down, but we had a building inspector approach us because everybody's sitting home looking out their windows and tattling on their neighbors. And we were replacing a pump, and the building inspector showed up, and I told him what we were doing. And he said, I'm not here to bust your chops. I just have to respond because we had a complaint. But it was 3 guys on a location 500 feet off the road. So that's kind of pathetic. In other areas, we've heard that the county sheriffs have stopped trucks, dump trucks, wondering where they were going. This was a couple of weeks ago. And different building inspectors have shut down other contractors, roofing guys, foundation people. So, yeah, definitely we've seen a resultant impact. Many of the big projects, municipalities, they're not sending out things are just on hold until we get some direction on when we can go to, phase 1, phase 2 openings. But we're plugging along every day.
Okay. All right. Well, and to that effect, I know we've touched a little bit on operational procedures, but I'd like to maybe go into a little more detail about what exactly the operational changes that you've made in your facilities and out in the field. Dan, you want to speak to that some more?
Sure. Yeah. So from an operations standpoint, I'd say, in our company, they've been the heroes, kind of like in our industry. The contractors and distributors have kept things going and kept people in water and kept paying the bills for those of us that have been deemed non-essential and are working from our houses. But so our operations is on complete lockdown. Only non-essential people are allowed to be there. They've instituted something called home base. So if you work on this line, you don't cross paths with somebody that works on this line. That goes all the way from eating lunch to using the restrooms. That way, if you do have somebody that gets infected in the factory, you only have to shut down that portion of the factory and sanitize before you can reopen. You don't have to shut down the whole factory. I think they're wearing the PPE, social distancing. It's been pretty remarkable to see how they've kept things going, and largely, supply's been pretty solid. So really thankful for that.
Okay, good. Gerry, what about at FlexCon?
Well, yeah, and again, echoing a lot of Dan's comments. I mean, for our products, in terms of the manufacturing,
your microphone is still.
Really?
Yeah, there. That's better.
Okay. So we're not a true assembly line manufacturing. As you can see from the picture behind me, that fellow is winding tanks and there's nobody 20 feet of them. And typically during the day, there isn't anybody that close to them. But we're certainly taking some of the same steps. One of the other things we did was increased our component inventory to assure that we had the products, and the raw materials available to build these essential products, to make sure that we can continue to manufacture. We're doing a lot of the same things, the PPE and the social distancing, just little things like our lunchroom. The tables are 8 feet in diameter. We've moved tables out of the lunchroom. There's only 2 seats at a table now. So, our employees can't get too close to each other. One of the other things we did, much like when you say work safe, Dan, but our shifts used to overlap. We run 2 shifts in the factory and they used to overlap, and we put a distance between them, a 30 or an hour-long distance between them, so that they no longer overlap and there's nobody congregating at the time clock machine. So, we're doing everything we can to again ensure that our employees and our associates are safe throughout this.
Okay. And Ryan, you touched a little bit on some of the things you're doing. Is there anything else that you'd like to touch on?
Mainly most of our operational procedures and any changes we've made have been focused around customer safety and our own employees' safety. Mm-hmm. Our offices are cleaner than they've ever been. Multiple times a day now. Mm-hmm. My sales staff was brought in soon after this popped up, although we are still making field calls to help solve technical issues. Mm-hmm. Things that they need somebody on site. A lot of these installations and water wells that we're working on, we can't FaceTime. There's no coverage. There's no way for us to contact these people via cell phone at the job site. We have to be there to be able to walk them through whatever issues they're experiencing. With the exception of addressing those technical issues, though, our staff is working from home if they don't work in one of our distribution locations.
Okay, and Pat?
Yeah, really echoing what everybody else has said. Our lunchrooms really, X amount of people in there per time when they're in there. We've given, again, our drivers, we give them sanitation bottles. We're giving them, masks to wear, all of our employees. That's the hardest part, I think, is those delivery drivers, because they're out and about and they're going from spot to spot and just trying to get them. And you don't know that they're always following. We put protocols in. We love to assume that they're doing it every single location, but the reality is we've given them direction to make sure they're wiping down any handles at employees after they've been out there to give them a spray bottle to mist products that they can mist with disinfectants. In regards to our employees, the big thing is, as mentioned, keeping our people, as many people as we can, at their homes. Our sales folks, we've implemented, because every salesperson is antsy and wants out. They'll use any excuse they can do to get out of the confined spaces that they're in. Everything's approved by myself. So if there's a technical place that they have to be at, it has to be in writing by the customer, and that is an emergency situation. And then I'll approve that they're able to go out. We've had a few salespeople filling in for a driver or other roles where they've had to make deliveries, and we're just making sure we're doing everything we can to protect our people and protect our customers.
Okay. And Jeff, I know you've had to make some changes in the way you do things.
Oh yes, being on the front lines here, we call anybody that calls. We try to determine how essential is it. Is it something that we can push down the road if need be? But we discuss with them our procedures and protocols, asking the people to stay inside, open the Bilco door, allow our people access to the basement, wearing their PPE. We've tried to minimize the traffic in and out of our office, requesting that supplies be dropped, and we don't need to have one-on-one correspondence with the people. And yes, I have to sentiment also, our offices are really clean. Our bathrooms, everything gets done several times a day. So we're following the procedures as best we can. But, for 4 weeks, we're out working, and then we get told to get masks. You couldn't get masks before that. We had them in our shop. So as it evolves and as the status quo changes from day to day, we adapt to, what we're told or how we're supposed to handle things.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So, has your business applied for any federal stimulus loan programs? And if so, what is the status of that? Dan, I think maybe you guys are
not
too
that
big.
Good call.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Jerry?
Well, we're not too big, Margaret. However, the fact that we've been able to continue, full production and basically full employment throughout this has led us to say that it's not something that we need to do.
Okay. What about you, Ryan?
No, we're lucky to be in a position where we did not apply for any of the federal stimulus programs. We did make sure that our customers knew what programs were available for them. Mm-hmm. And many of the national organizations were helpful in providing that information to us and making sure that was shared with our customers at some level.
Okay.
I do want to give, sorry, Margaret, I want to give Water Systems Council credit because you guys have done a fantastic job of pushing that information to our members and making sure that people are aware that there's opportunities for them to apply for those grants and loans if they needed to.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. And we'll have Jeff speak to that in just a minute.
Okay.
Pat, has Blake done anything with the program?
Yeah, so actually we did, and this part in regards to, we actually furloughed around 35 employees in March. We looked at the PPE, we applied, we were in early, we were awarded, and we brought back all those furloughed employees. So the loan did what it was intended to do. And that was to bring people back, put it in. And, there's a lot to it. We've spent a lot of hours applying, a lot of hours during the change because, think about what they did, the government in a time frame. And there are a lot of questions that came out even after the loans were awarded. So that actually continues to evolve in how that works. But it was a good situation because I will say that the loan did what it did. We likely would have held off a little bit further on those furloughs as we were seeing how things progressed with, being down, as much as we were on the revenue during the, that month of April. So yeah, that's where we were. We were fortunate to receive it.
Great. What about you, Jeff?
I was reluctant to. My accountant insisted. He said, hey, apply for it. So we did, and that was for the Paycheck Protection Program. And we applied on the second day of the first round of funding, and we never heard anything. And then when the second round came through a couple of weeks ago, we applied, bank called us, said, hey, everything's been accepted. We then had to fill out another 25 pages of paperwork to secure that loan. And to my knowledge, the account for 8 weeks of pay reimbursement was funded yesterday. But 90% of that has to be used directly for payroll. And it may be forgiven, it may not. It's a low interest, and that's what my accountant said. If you do something else with the money, you'll never be able to borrow it at that lower rate. So we did participate.
Okay, and one more question for the group, and then Jeff's going to fill us in on some federal stuff. Just looking down the road, what do you see for the water well industry, business conditions, both short and long term? Diane?
Yeah, so short term, I think we all agree it's going to be a rough patch here in 2020, especially the next couple months. And so we'll work our way through that. I think long term, I think we're in a really good position as an industry. I think we've got a very strong value proposition as an industry, and we're in a situation in this country where we've got a severe water infrastructure problem, as I'm sure Jeff will tell us here later, and we're an underutilized resource in solution into fixing that problem. So I really believe that's our best days are ahead because we're really getting the word out like we never have in the past. So and thanks to Water Systems Council and your help in doing that.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Gerry.
Yeah, again, it's ditto for what Dan said, and I think interestingly enough, we've all kind of lived through something. It's not quite similar, but certainly the 2008, 2009 downturn showed a significant decline in the water systems business as well. But the work that the council has done since then, I think really bodes well for the industry as a whole. And going forward, again, water is an essential component of American life, and as the country recovers from this and then continues to expand, private water systems are certainly going to be a significant component of that. The short-term thing, we're going to live through this for the next 3 months, 6 months. 2020 is not going to look the way it did when we budgeted it, is it?
Right.
But it's not going to be a disaster. I don't think, and I think that going forward we can continue to look at growing the water systems industry as a whole.
Okay, great. Okay, Brian.
The one thing I'm certain on is I'm uncertain what's going to happen. Now, what I see today could be dramatically different tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Will be dramatically different next week, and in 6 months, I'm sure I don't know what's going to happen. We continue to gauge our customers' requirements and try to adapt and respond to this environment that we're in. I'm sure the water well industry is going to continue to provide and maintain the critical equipment and services that are needed to maintain, water infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
If I can think of anything that might be a bright point in what we're going through, it's that maybe portions of our industry are now being forced to modernize and accept some new practices that they've been reluctant to prior to this. And as little as these online meetings, been more online meetings for probably everybody in this room in the week than there were in the last year.
Right.
And,
right. Sure. Okay, thank you. And Patrick?
Yeah, so again, echoing some of what was said in regards to, we look at it in a 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and then 3-year portion, and we're meeting 3 times a week to try to understand that. And as I said, it changes, but we do believe that May is going to be a tough month. We think that June will start to bounce back as businesses are for the most part getting back at that pent-up business that's out there. We know contractors, we're talking to them, they have business. They had business ahead of time. Now it's are they able to do it because the local municipalities are letting them do it, and are the customers willing to let them back in? So we believe that's going to happen. Although I think the longer term outlook is still not, I think that is in question, but with the amount of money that was lost in taxes, municipalities, schools, the money's not going to be there. So we feel there's going to be as much impact in 2021 on the commercial industrial type projects, not as much residential. Yes, there's going to be some people that we feel like, hey, you didn't make as much money last year. You might not have as much disposable. You might put off another year building a house, building your second home, et cetera. So that's there. But our biggest concern is our commercial industrial work. We don't see any way how there's going to be some of that government money available to do those projects in 2021 and maybe into 2022. So truthfully, we feel like 2021 could be a tough year for us, maybe even worse than 2020. We feel like we may finish out fairly strong in 2020.
Very interesting. Okay, and Jeff?
Well, I certainly think the short term is going to be harder than the long term for the groundwater industry. As we already talked, revenue is going to be down dramatically this second quarter, but we do expect things to kick back up. But again, the suppliers, manufacturers are all going to feel the bite. with our global economy and our immigration policies, unfortunately, future health pandemics and issues are going to occur. And I hope that our manufacturers recognize and can realize we need to bring more of these jobs back to the United States and not have to depend on China for everything from Advil to personal protective equipment. My family's been in the groundwater industry for 104 years. That's 5 generations. They made it through the Great Depression, recessions, 3 pandemics, 2 world wars, 3 other wars. And through all these events, no matter how bad it's been, we've always had work. My family's always been able to go to work throughout this, thank God. And the groundwater industry is no different. It's founded on and continues to operate due to the diligent, hardworking individuals who, through the good times and bads, they get up every morning and work 7 days a week to get the water from the bottom of the well to the top of your glass. So we as an industry, I think, will persevere. And at this point in my life, I'm really grateful that I'm deemed an essential person for once in my life, because at least I can go to work and get a check every week. So
Wow.
I think the groundwater industry will be okay, but I appreciate hearing from like Pat, hey, 2021, I haven't looked that far ahead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're just looking for the next couple of weeks and from there the next couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
But the industry will be here.
Well said, Jeff. Thank you very much. And now I'd like Jeff Moore, our Government Affairs Liaison, to bring us up to speed. There's been a lot of stuff going on this week in Washington that I thought folks would like to hear about. Jeff?
Yeah. Well, obviously, the government's been very focused on helping small businesses, trying to get PPEs out the door, trying to help with testing, helping hospitals. At some point, we're starting to see the realities of unemployment. And, you know, as Dan Story pointed out, we're probably looking at close to 20% unemployment this time next month nationally. And as that happens, policymakers have really, for about the last month and a half, started focusing on what happens once we get the pandemic under control and what sort of economic recovery stimulus are we going to need to get the economy going again, get people back to work. You know, unlike the people on this call, a lot of people are in a really, in a service industry where these jobs aren't going to come back in the classic way, you know, movie theaters, restaurants, and a huge part of our economy is service oriented. So we're going to have significant unemployment for quite a while. One of the areas of putting people back to work that's been around since the Depression is investment in infrastructure. And both the House of Representatives and the Senate have been working very diligently. The committees we work with, like the Environment and Public Works Committee, where Senator Bozeman and, you know, Senator Whitehouse and all these folks we've worked with over the years, they've been working very hard to put together a water infrastructure component of a very large infrastructure bill that will include highways, probably airports, Army Corps of Engineer projects, and 2 really promising developments. Last month, Speaker Pelosi, along with the chairman of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, they put out their plan for moving forward, their moving forward framework. In that, they had $40 billion for the water state revolving funds, the Clean Water and Safe Drinking Water Act state revolving funds. Mm-hmm. To put that in perspective, we're spending about $3 billion a year on that now. Yesterday, as Margaret alluded to, the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee marked up the American Water Infrastructure Act and the Drinking Water Infrastructure Act, 2 pieces of legislation putting over $20 billion into water infrastructure. The bills were reported out of the committee where we've testified before about the great need and everything else, the Senate Environment Committee, 21-0. The Republicans and the Democrats are in complete agreement that we need to make these investments in infrastructure.
Great.
But really, you know, not only drinking water infrastructure, and I will send around the specifics now that it's out of committee, huge focus on rural drinking water and rural drinking water challenges. Obviously, the Senate has people who represent a lot of rural states. You know, the chairman of the committee is from Wyoming. There are people from Alaska, the Dakotas. So once we have this pandemic somewhat under control where people can start going back to work in our industry, there will likely be the largest infusion of money for rural drinking water that we're ever going to see in our lifetimes, because they want to put people back to work. Mm-hmm. And, you know, as Gerry alluded to and Dan, we've put a lot of things in place to make sure that if you're a community under 500 and you have a drinking water problem, it's now in law that you have to look at a well or well system, you know, cluster wells or different well permutations to solve your problem. Right. There's going to be billions of dollars that'll go to rural America to do that. So, you know, as you look at the third quarter, and, you know, I know Patrick was worried about, or Ryan was about 2021 and different things. I think as we go into next year, there will be a lot of federal money out there to try to stimulate the economy and get it up and running again. And it doesn't matter who wins in November. Both parties know that we have to get people back to work. Right. And infrastructure is one of the areas where people can go out and start drilling wells. They can go out and start, you know, doing water infrastructure work in a way almost like no other infrastructure. If you're gonna build a highway, you have to do an environmental impact statement in a process that can take you 2 or 3 years. If you want to replace, you know, some pumps, if you want to drill wells and do things, a lot less environmental regulations to deal with, frankly. And we can put this money to work and get people working quicker than a lot of other infrastructure investments. So I will send around, you know, here I have here the press release from yesterday's markup. EPW committee unanimously advances bipartisan water infrastructure legislation. Right. You know, these are strange times. We used to testify before the committee. We used to sit there. The committee met. There were only members there, no staff. They used the largest committee room in the Senate. They were all 6 feet apart. And guess what? Because of the situation, I guess, they agreed on absolutely everything and praised each other up and down. The Republican chairman of the committee thanked the Mr. Cardin from Maryland, a Democrat, for going on Fox News and making the case for investing in drinking water infrastructure. So there is some good news here. I think it's down the road a bit as this economic crisis comes into more focus, but we're in a really good spot. Our champions really stepped up, Mr. Bozeman, White House, other people we've worked with for years, and said all kinds of great things about investing in infrastructure and water infrastructure and rural water infrastructure. So we have some education to do. The committees in the House and the Senate who historically work on these issues, they know the issues and get it. As a stimulus package comes forward, everybody's going to want their money. The states are going to want money. Hospitals are going to want money. Highways. We need to keep working with the people that we've worked on historically, but any place you have a company, you know, I mean, like Jeff Smith, the people in upstate New York have historically been Republican and Democrat, whether it's, you know, Mr. Katko or Mr. Tonko, who is, you know, near Jeff. He's the chairman of the subcommittee on energy and commerce that deals with drinking water. Jeff's congressman or neighbor congressman. So we need to reach out to those people and help them make sure that when they do a stimulus, investment in rural water infrastructure is a big part of it. And it's, you know, it's a good thing for us. We're one of the few people who actually have something that people on a bipartisan basis want to do. So that's some good news from Washington.
That is good news. That is indeed. Well, I sure appreciate everybody's participation in this town hall. I think you've gotten some good information out, and we're going to be sharing it with our Water Systems Council members. So thank you, everybody. Stay well and stay safe.
All right. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.